Okay, guys, so as some of you have probably heard by now, obviously Disney has released the new Mulan film, and if you were anything like me growing up, you've probably already seen the cartoon versions of, Mulan and then the sequel Mulan 2, and I found them to be, decent films. They had their action scenes, they had its funny moments, and yeah, I generally thought they were quite good. Now, I have a lot of problems with the new live action remake film that they've done for a multitude of reasons, not specifically Islamic ones. And I'm not the only person who has noticed this. Now, obviously, from an Islamic perspective, they filmed this film in Xinjiang, which is the province in China where the Uyghur Muslims are being held in, these concentration camps. So, yeah, that's the first problem with that. And that's something that Disney kind of needs to get right with the public, and they need to issue an apology there and stop supporting, governments and shooting in locations, because obviously they're paying the government to let them be there, and for letting them do things like this with the amount of human suffering that's going on. It's no different than them shooting a film in a concentration camp or something like that. So, yeah, that's something that obviously not only as Muslims should we be offended by, but in people in general, which is what, and don't get me wrong, obviously there are people who aren't Muslims who are offended by this. All right. The second kind of controversy that's gone on there is the main actress who plays Mulan, Liu Yifei, I believe it's pronounced. Apologies if I've gotten the name wrong. Recently shared a photo, I believe, on Twitter that was published by the Chinese Communist Party about the police in Hong Kong beating protesters, and it seemed that she was sharing that photo in support of that. And yeah, that's again why these type of movies, they do need to be boycotted, and Disney needs to be held to task for supporting and paying into these regimes in a sense. So yeah, that's that one. The LGBT community has gotten offended, although I don't really know how much stock I put in this part, only because they said that, well, basically, if you ever remember the cartoon films, there was that whole issue of Mulan falling in love with like her commanding officer while she was pretending to be a man, and that was kind of the subplot of the film. Her trying to hide the fact that she's a woman, because in those times she would have been killed for impersonating a man. And yeah, so they took that part out with the film, partly because of the Me Too movement. However, the LGBT community protested because they took it out that was highlighting a bisexual relationship between Mulan as a man and her commanding officer. Now, I've seen the cartoon films of Mulan, a few times. Not once have I ever looked at that film and gone and, seen the interactions between them two and just gone, oh yeah, that's, a quasi-homosexual relationship. Not once has that ever remotely crossed my mind. And also the fact that they said the LGBT community is up in arms about this. I have not heard a single member of the LGBTQ community complaining about this. Not once. And also, how are they able to speak for the entire community? To me, that means they've spoken to literally every single member of this community in the world to be able to get that information. And considering the fact that I haven't even heard it once, and I'm always on the internet. Literally, most of my life is spent on the internet. Not had a single complaint about that. So, yeah. And obviously, I understand that if the gay community is offended by this, it's not every member of the gay community that is. So this next part is I'm only going to be speaking to that specific portion of the gay community that is offended by the fact that they've taken out that subplot. Not every film has to have, homosexual representation in that film. It doesn't. So stop complaining just because there isn't enough gay characters in a film. I'm sorry that there's not. Like, it's not a thing. So, yeah. And again, also for the people that said that, the entire gay community is outraged by this, no, they're not. Stop doing it to try and gain traction and clout for your criticisms. Yeah. So, yeah, that's that part. And just in general, and this is just a problem with capitalism here, this next part. As some of you may remember, if you ever saw the Golden Globes, Ricky Gervais just went off on people. He went off on people like Google and Apple who run sweatshops in China, which is how they get cheap labor to make their phones and all the other devices that these companies produce. they use sweatshop labor in China. I mean, apparently the Apple factory in China actually had to put nets up because people were literally jumping out of the windows to commit suicide over the conditions. So they just put nets up to catch them. Yeah. These companies really don't have a leg to stand on. Obviously, Disney's had a history with racism and anti-Semitism anyway, so it doesn't really surprise me. And then also with the Disney Plus thing, because obviously the movie was released on Disney Plus, and however, so obviously I think as far as I'm aware, you have to pay to use Disney Plus anyway. You then had to pay an extra £30 apparently, or something around that mark, to even watch the film. Now, if you have Netflix, chances are you pay for your Netflix unless you're using somebody else's. But that's like you paying for Netflix and then having to pay again to watch a film on Netflix. That's essentially what they've done. So again, this is the problem with capitalism here. So this is why, not only as Muslims, but as people, again, this video isn't only meant for Muslims, it's meant for anyone who is sympathetic towards these issues. We need to stop supporting companies like this with our money. We do. And that's the problem with a lot of these actors. It's like Ricky Gervais said in the Golden Globe speech. Yeah, you say you're woke, but you'll still happily go and work for these services. So, yeah, all these actors need to stop trying to take a stand against things like this when they're still working for the same companies that do this. And yeah, as just people in general, we need to start boycotting this. Just ignoring it isn't going to make this problem go away. We need to protest against this. We need to start writing in. We need to start signing petitions and doing everything we possibly can just to get these companies shut down at the end of the day. And this is a consistent problem, because right now, yeah, fair enough, it's the Muslims, but next time it could be the Jews. Next time it could be the Christians. I mean, let's not forget what Netflix did with that Dajjal series that they had, which Netflix actually had to pull because of the fact that they were getting so many complaints from all across the board. So it's not that we can't get these things pulled off the platforms. We can. We just have to try and get enough voices of support behind us in order to do it. It's one of the reasons that I use my YouTube channel for. I've got, almost 1,600 subscribers. That could be 1,600 petitions signed. And yeah, guys, the kind of last final reason we shouldn't watch this film, and this is more from the humour side of things, is that Mushu is in it. You remember in the original cartoons, the red dragon played by Eddie Murphy, the kind of comic relief side of it? Yeah, he's not in the film whatsoever, and let's be honest, that's pretty much the best part of the film is Mushu. So yeah, regardless whether you agree with the political reasons for not watching the film or the comedic reasons for not watching the film, quite frankly, you shouldn't just watch this film. From what I've heard, apparently it's nowhere near as good as the original cartoon versions were anyway. So yeah, guys, that's all for this one. Thank you for tuning in, and until next time, peace.